Hey, welcome back to the Lick of the Week videos. I've been reading some of the results of the poll, the Lick of the Week poll, and I appreciate everybody's input. I've got some really good ideas about some future videos to do. It seems like the majority of folks want to see some more advanced backup ideas or see some backup licks explained in greater detail, so I thought I would kind of jump right in that with this video this week and maybe talk about approaching slow material on the banjo. Now, everyone associates banjo with fast breakdowns and medium tempo driving songs, which makes up a big part of bluegrass music. But the banjo can be really beautiful and really effective on slow material. But the typical Scruggs licks that you use work better at mid to higher tempos. Some of the licks, like the two-finger backup lick, actually works good for slower tunes, but once the tempo gets to a certain pace, or say in 3/4 time, the roll approaches to backup just tends to fall apart. So a lot of banjo players will just not play the banjo. And let's face it, there's sometimes when the banjo doesn't fit a piece of music, or the piece of music you're trying to play doesn't really need the banjo. But then there are times when you might lay the banjo down thinking, well, I don't have anything to offer for backup or solos in this song because it's so slow and it's a different timing signature. I'll just lay the banjo down, but there are some really beautiful things. And Sonny Osborne was genius. Actually, had taken licks from electric guitars, pedal steel, lap steel, piano players. Earl was influenced by a lot of great piano players like Moon Mulligan in the 50s. So Earl adapted some of his ideas from the piano. The thing that you have to fight with the banjo on slower material is sustain, because the banjo is designed to have rapid decay where the notes die out. So the purpose of playing rolls in songs a lot of the times is to keep something going, keep the sustain happening. So when you play really slow material, or let's say country type tunes on the banjo, sometimes the rolls the spaces between them get so exaggerated by the tempo and the timing signature that they just fall apart. So a very effective approach is to do what Adcock and Sonny Osborne and a lot of those players did back in those days, was to use a tremolo style, same thing you'd see a mandolin player do, which is to increase the sustain of an instrument by increasing the number of notes in a measure as opposed to stretching the notes out. So let me give you an example of some tremolo ideas that you may hear in bluegrass banjo. So it's a really beautiful, and it's almost like another style to me. I just consider that tremolo banjo is kind of, if you play a lot of it, I kind of consider it almost a separate style from melodic, single string, and Scruggs. And you're using three-finger picks, but in a lot of different combinations. And what you try to think of when you're playing a tremolo style of banjo is think more chord tones and combining different notes of the scale. So let me break down some of the things I did. Now, I know I don't have a lot of time in a 10-minute video, but let's break down some of the things. Now, one of the big things about playing some of these slower tunes is mixing tremolo in not just with chord tones. You notice some of these notes were contained in the chord shapes, but also combining the notes to walk your way between chords, kind of like passing tones. But what you're doing is combining different notes of the scale. So they have names for these pairings, like fourths, thirds, seconds, fifths, sixths. And what they're referring to is the distance between the notes. And you're playing two notes against each other in this style. And they're usually certain numbers apart in the scale. So let's start with this G chord. I'm concentrating on playing the third string and the first string out of this G chord, which is a G and a B. Now if you think about a G scale, G, A, B. Okay, there are three notes apart, basically. To get from a G to a B in a G scale is 3 notes, so we would call that a third. Okay, now when I switch to this position, I'm actually borrowing 2 notes out of an F chord, but I'm not playing an F, I'm playing these 2 harmonized strings. Here I'm playing a C and an A. And if you think about a G scale, if you want to consider this all based in G, you got G, A, B, C. So A, B, C. So that's another third. And then I slide up here, I'm actually playing the same 2 strings out of a greater G chord, but I'm just concentrating on these 2 notes. So what in essence is happening is I'm playing a G scale. And of course I'm not playing the scale verbatim, but I'm pairing the scale note, which is on the first string, with a harmonized note from the same scale. So I have a G and a B as a harmony pair. Here's the B and an A and a C. Here is a B, and that would be a D. Here's a C and an E. Here is a D, and this would be your F sharp. Here's G, and of course that would be an E. So what's happening is you're playing the scale on one string, but at the same time pairing it up with another note of the scale, usually thirds and sometimes fourths. Now that by itself is kind of nice sounding, but when you combine that with tremolo, which is just a rapid movement, it could be 16th notes, it could be 32nd notes, it just depends on the timing signature and how you want to express the notes. Now that's just isolating 2 notes, one note being the note of the scale in order, like G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, and the other note is just a note that sounds good with it as a harmonized pair. Now you can combine any notes of the scale in any order. You could play the first note of the scale and the 7th note of the scale, the first note and the last note, which would be an octave. There's a lot of different ways to express these notes, but thirds seem to be the most common kind of voicing for these harmonized pairs that you hear in bluegrass. Now by playing some of the in-between tones, then you get really nice harmony pairs that operate as passing tones, which means notes that just kind of blend you from one chord and change into another. So listen to this. I'm going to go from this G harmonized to the A sharp, and then the G. So it gives them more of a kind of country blues sound. And again, I'm going from G to G, from C to C, D to a D. And if I want to add a little bit of fatness or a little bit of thickness to this sound, I can always add some of the adjacent notes out of the chords, and I come up with something that's a little thicker sounding. So at any point in that, I can decide just to play the 2 harmonized strings out of the chord shapes. I can add chord tones that are adjacent to those 2 strings, other notes that are in the chord, like 3-note pinches. I can add so there's a lot of great things. I mean, there's so many things to do here in this style that there's no way we could cover them in 100 videos. But this will just give you a good basic starting point for using some of these harmonized strings. And again, think about the chord structure of the song. Use the chords that are already in the song, even the minors that appear. If it's like a 1-4-5 with a 6, a relative minor, try finding those and try some of those harmony strings. Use notes out of the chords and just shuffle back and forth in a tremolo style. I hope this proves challenging and interesting, and it gives you something really nice to play in slow songs.